This is SNL Saturday Night Live actually in America. Not this new UK version, but the American version on Weekend Update has gone for her again. And this was the most savage tick yet. I mean, they actually call her a tick. Watch this.
Saturday night, May 2nd, 2026. Studio 8H in New York City. What began as another routine episode of Saturday Night Live quickly turned into one of the most talked about royal moments in American entertainment. Because just seconds after Colin Jost looked straight into the camera and delivered what sounded like an ordinary setup line, the entire mood inside the studio changed.
Okay. King Charles visited the U.S. to mark the 250th anniversary of American independence from Britain and to seek the release of a British hostage being held by an American
I tried so hard.
The audience exploded into laughter. Social media began clipping the moment in real time. And within hours, millions of viewers were all asking the exact same question. When did Meghan Markle become one of the safest targets in late-night comedy? Because make no mistake, what happened that night did not feel accidental, and it definitely did not feel like one harmless celebrity joke that would disappear by the next morning. The moment Prince Harry and Meghan Markle appeared on that giant studio screen behind Colin Jost, something inside that room shifted instantly. And what made the reaction so impossible to ignore was not simply how loudly people laughed, but how comfortable everyone looked while laughing.
Did you like it?
I'm almost speechless.
Oh man, it's so funny, Dan. It's so funny.
No awkward silence. No confused faces. No hesitation. Just instant recognition. Followed by the kind of crowd reaction that usually only happens when an audience already knows exactly where the joke is going before the punchline even lands. And that is where this story starts becoming much bigger than one television segment. Because in modern entertainment, audiences do not laugh that hard unless the culture has already moved. And by the time the clip from NBC started spreading across celebrity blogs, entertainment pages, royal discussion channels, and social media platforms across the United States, the United Kingdom, and beyond, it became painfully clear that this was no longer just about comedy. This was about perception. This was about timing. And perhaps most importantly, this was about image. For years, Meghan Markle, the former Suits actress who entered the British monarchy as a symbol of modern change, seemed almost untouchable in American media. Magazine covers protected Meghan Markle. Streaming platforms celebrated Meghan Markle. Red carpets welcomed Meghan Markle. Interview hosts carefully framed Meghan Markle as the outsider who had supposedly shaken centuries of royal tradition. Even after the departure from the monarchy, even after the documentaries, the memoirs, the podcast launches, the interviews, the business ventures, and the endless headlines, much of mainstream entertainment still treated Meghan Markle and Prince Harry as carefully managed public figures whose narrative remained largely under control. But something changed. And what happened inside Studio 8H may have exposed exactly when that change became impossible to ignore. Because jokes like this do not appear out of nowhere. Every line delivered on Weekend Update passes through writers, producers, executives, legal review, timing checks, rehearsal runs, camera blocking, and audience testing before it ever reaches millions of viewers. That means multiple people inside one of America's biggest comedy institutions look directly at that punchline involving Meghan Markle, approve that punchline involving Prince Harry, approve the visual, approve the timing, approve the delivery, and perhaps most importantly, believe the audience would reward it. And judging by what happened next, they were absolutely right. Within less than 48 hours, clips of Colin Jost, Meghan Markle, and Prince Harry had flooded royal commentary pages, celebrity accounts, reaction channels, and entertainment discussions across the internet. And instead of outrage dominating the conversation, something far more surprising started happening. People were laughing right along with it. And once that happens, once public figures stop being defended and start becoming expected punchlines, history shows that the royal story is only beginning. What made that reaction even more fascinating was the simple fact that none of it looked spontaneous. And the deeper people looked into that moment involving Colin Jost, Meghan Markle, and Prince Harry, the harder it became to dismiss what happened inside Studio 8H as just another throwaway late-night joke. Because in American television, especially on a flagship program like Saturday Night Live, comedy may look effortless on camera, but behind every laugh sits an entire machine built around calculation, timing, and audience psychology. Writers pitch dozens of lines. Producers cut what feels risky. Legal teams remove what feels dangerous. Hosts rehearse every pause, every glance, every image reveal, every beat designed to trigger exactly the response the studio wants. Which means when Colin Jost looked directly into the camera that night and delivered a punchline involving Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, what America was really watching was not one comedian taking a shot at two public figures. What America was watching was one of the biggest entertainment institutions in the country quietly signaling that the cultural temperature around Meghan Markle and Prince Harry had changed. And once that realization began spreading online, viewers started noticing something even more interesting. This was not the first time Colin Jost had done it. If you rewind exactly 1 year, back to May of 2025, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Same desk, same lighting, same weekend update format, same Colin Jost. And once again, what began as what sounded like routine political commentary slowly shifted into something very different the moment the conversation turned toward Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. At first, most viewers did not catch what was happening, because that is how skilled writers at NBC work. They start with safe material. Politics, trade, international headlines, diplomatic stories, topics that lower audience defenses. But then, almost without warning, the setup changes, the camera timing shifts, the photo appears, and suddenly Meghan Markle and Prince Harry become the center of the joke. And just like in 2026, the audience reacted instantly. Not politely, not cautiously, loudly, comfortably, almost as if everyone in that room already understood the assignment. That is when viewers online began connecting the dots, because what happened in 2025 did not feel isolated anymore. What happened in 2025 suddenly looked like a test run for what exploded in 2026. Entertainment blogs began replaying both clips side by side. Royal discussion channels began comparing crowd reactions. Celebrity commentators began pointing out how Colin Jost barely needed to finish certain punchlines before laughter had already started. And when audiences begin laughing before the punchline lands, that usually means something far more powerful than comedy is happening. It means public perception has already moved ahead of the script. And that may be the most uncomfortable part of this entire story for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, because not very long ago, Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, and Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, were treated in American media like premium celebrity royalty, protected by carefully managed interviews, polished streaming specials, glossy magazine features, strategic public appearances, podcast launches, documentary deals, and media partnerships worth millions. Every appearance felt controlled. Every headline felt curated. Every camera angle felt intentional. Even critics often sounded cautious when discussing Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, as though the cultural rules around criticizing the couple still had invisible boundaries. But by 2025, those boundaries appeared to be fading. And by 2026, those boundaries may have disappeared entirely. At the same time that Colin Jost was turning Meghan Markle and Prince Harry into punchlines on national television, Prince Harry was publicly speaking about reconciliation with the royal family, while Meghan Markle was focusing on business launches, lifestyle branding, media development, and carefully managed public projects. On paper, it looked like a comeback strategy. It looked polished. It looked strategic. It looked designed to shift the conversation away from old controversies and toward a fresh chapter. But late-night television seemed to be reading the same headlines very differently. Instead of comeback stories, comedy writers saw contradiction. Instead of reinvention, comedy writers saw repetition. Instead of controlled image management, comedy writers saw material. And once comedy writers smell material, history shows they rarely let go. That is why what happened after the Colin Jost segment may have been even more revealing than the joke itself, because in earlier years, even a mild joke involving Meghan Markle could trigger days of online outrage, endless social media debates, emotional commentary, celebrity defenses, and headlines accusing critics of crossing the line. But this time, something felt completely different. The outrage never truly arrived. The backlash never fully formed. The clip kept spreading. The jokes kept being reposted. The reaction videos kept appearing. The memes kept multiplying. And perhaps for the first time, even casual viewers who had never followed royal drama closely began noticing the same pattern. Meghan Markle was no longer being treated like a protected public figure. Meghan Markle was being treated like recurring comedy material. And once that shift happens in American entertainment, it almost never stays on one stage for long. And that is exactly where this story takes a far more unexpected turn, because the deeper viewers started digging into what happened between Colin Jost, Meghan Markle, and Prince Harry in 2026, the more one uncomfortable truth began emerging from years of archived footage, old sketches, forgotten punchlines, and clips that many royal watchers had either missed completely or never thought would matter this much. What if this did not begin in 2025? What if this did not even begin after the memoirs, the documentaries, the podcast launches, or the media tours? What if one of America's biggest comedy institutions had been quietly tracking the public evolution of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry for years, long before most people realized it was happening? To answer that question, you have to go back to April of 2019, just months after Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, and Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, were still being presented across much of American media as the modern royal fairy tale. The headlines were polished. The photographs were glamorous. The interviews were respectful. Streaming executives, magazine editors, and celebrity hosts still spoke about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry with a kind of careful admiration usually reserved for public figures whose brand still feels fresh, protected, and culturally profitable. But while much of the public was still watching the fairy tale, Saturday Night Live appeared to be watching something else entirely. That year, during one of its royal parody segments, Saturday Night Live aired a sketch that many viewers initially treated as harmless satire, another exaggerated take on palace life, another celebrity comedy bit designed to generate quick laughs before moving on to the next headline. The studio audience laughed. The sketches aired. Social media clipped a few lines. Then, like most comedy segments, it should have faded. But it didn't. Because years later, royal discussion pages, entertainment analysts, and longtime viewers started revisiting that 2019 material, and what once looked like ordinary parody suddenly felt strangely predictive. Certain jokes about family tension, certain visual cues, certain lines about awkward dynamics inside the monarchy, certain references that, at the time, felt exaggerated for comic effect suddenly started looking very different after the public fallout, the interviews, the memoirs, the documentaries, and the increasingly personal media battles that followed. And when old jokes begin feeling more accurate with time, audiences tend to pay attention. That is exactly what happened. Clips from 2019 started resurfacing. Reaction channels started replaying them. Royal commentary pages started breaking down old punchlines frame by frame. And what made the conversation even more fascinating was the simple fact that nobody at NBC tried to distance themselves from any of it. No statements. No edits. No removals. No attempts to soften old material. The sketches stayed online. The clips stayed public. The jokes remained exactly where they were, almost as if the writers understood from the beginning that royal headlines involving Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were never going to disappear. And then the timeline moved forward. By early 2021, after one of the most talked about royal interviews in modern history had already sent headlines across the United States, the United Kingdom, and nearly every major entertainment market in between, late-night comedy did not step back. Late-night comedy leaned in. Almost immediately, major television writers began folding Meghan Markle and Prince Harry into new punchlines, fresh monologues, musical sketches, and pop culture references that spread online within hours. What once felt like isolated jokes now started looking like a pattern. And every time Meghan Markle launched a new media project, every time Prince Harry sat down for another public appearance, every time another headline emerged involving podcasts, documentaries, memoirs, reconciliation, branding, or palace tension, the comedy cycle seemed ready before the headlines had even finished spreading. That kind of speed does not happen by accident. That happens when public figures stop being treated like protected symbols and start being treated like reliable cultural material. And by 2023, that transformation may have become impossible to deny. By then, Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, and Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, were no longer simply appearing in the occasional celebrity joke. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were becoming recurring reference points inside American comedy, shorthand for media drama, branding controversies, family tension, public image battles, and the increasingly blurred line between royalty and celebrity culture. Viewers no longer needed full explanations. Writers no longer needed long setups. Sometimes all a comedian needed was a photo of Meghan Markle, a photo of Prince Harry, a pause, a raised eyebrow, and the audience already understood exactly where the joke was going. And that may be the most revealing shift of all. Because when audiences start laughing before the punchline lands, when viewers across social media begin recognizing the pattern before writers even finish the setup, when old sketches start resurfacing and feeling more relevant than new headlines. That usually means the culture is no longer reacting to the story. The culture has already decided what the story is. And for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, that realization may explain why what happened in 2026 felt less like one savage joke, and far more like the payoff to a story that American comedy had been quietly building for years. And by the time that pattern became impossible to ignore, another name inside the royal family began revealing just how far American comedy was willing to go once a public figure crossed that invisible line between protected status and recurring punchline. Because while much of the online conversation remained focused on Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, producers, writers, and audiences at Saturday Night Live had already shown that this was never really about one couple. This was about something much larger. This was about how mainstream entertainment decides when a public figure stops being presented as cultural royalty and starts becoming cultural material. And perhaps no example made that clearer than the way American television began handling Prince Andrew. By early 2022, Prince Andrew was already facing intense global scrutiny, constant media criticism, and relentless public discussion across both sides of the Atlantic. And almost immediately, writers inside NBC appeared to recognize something that comedy institutions rarely ignore. The audience was ready. The headlines were everywhere. The cultural conversation was already emotionally charged. And when those three ingredients come together, late-night television usually moves fast. Prince Andrew was no longer introduced as a royal figure surrounded by protocol, ceremony, or institutional distance. Prince Andrew was introduced as a symbol, a shorthand, a reference point, a name that required almost no setup before the audience reacted. And the reaction came instantly. Not because the jokes themselves were necessarily more aggressive than what American television had done before, but because the audience already understood what Prince Andrew represented the moment the name appeared. One look, one pause, one image on screen, one carefully timed delivery. That was all it took. The studio erupted. Social media clipped it. Entertainment pages reposted it. Reaction channels broke it down. And once again, the same pattern that viewers had been watching with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry began appearing somewhere else inside the royal story. First comes controversy. Then comes repeated coverage. Then comes audience familiarity. And eventually comes comedy. That pattern mattered because it revealed something bigger about how American audiences process royal narratives in the digital age. The monarchy was no longer being consumed only as tradition, history, or diplomacy. The monarchy was now being consumed as ongoing serialized entertainment, where every new headline involving King Charles III, Prince Andrew, Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, or Catherine, Princess of Wales could instantly become the next viral segment, the next trending clip, the next late-night punchline, or the next internet debate. And by late 2025, that transformation had become even harder to ignore. Fresh headlines involving Prince Andrew once again pushed the royal family back into mainstream discussion. And almost immediately, Weekend Update returned to the subject with a kind of confidence that only comes when writers know the audience is already emotionally invested before the joke even begins. The delivery was sharper. The pauses were longer. The timing felt colder. The crowd responded faster. And by the next morning, entertainment blogs across the United States were already describing the segment as one of the most brutal royal punchlines aired in recent memory. But what stood out was not simply the joke. What stood out was the confidence behind the joke. Because confidence in comedy usually reflects confidence in culture. And by this point, it was becoming clear that writers at Saturday Night Live no longer viewed royal headlines as delicate material that required caution. Royal headlines had become familiar territory. Reliable territory. Predictable territory. The writers knew the audience would follow. The audience knew the references. And social media knew exactly how to amplify the moment before the credits even finished rolling. Then came May 2026. Same studio. Same lights. Same Weekend Update desk. Same Colin Jost. By that point, Colin Jost had already delivered punchlines involving Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, and the audience inside Studio 8H was fully engaged, fully warmed up, and fully synchronized with every beat of the segment. But then something happened that quietly tied the entire royal comedy timeline together. Another image appeared on screen. Another royal face. Another carefully timed setup. Another pause. Another release. And once again, the room exploded. Not with surprise, with recognition. And that may be the most revealing part of this entire story, because surprise creates laughter once. Recognition creates laughter again and again. By 2026, American audiences no longer needed long explanations about palace tensions, memoir controversies, media deals, documentary backlash, public interviews, or image management. The names alone carried the story. Meghan Markle meant controversy. Prince Harry meant media drama. Prince Andrew meant scandal. King Charles III often represented institutional pressure. And that shorthand had become so deeply embedded inside entertainment culture that the jokes almost wrote themselves. Which raises a far bigger question than one comedy segment ever could. If American audiences are now reacting to members of the British royal family less like untouchable historical figures, and more like recurring characters inside an ongoing cultural drama, then has the monarchy really changed? Or has the audience changed first? And that question may explain why what happened on that May night in 2026 felt so much bigger than one punchline, one crowd reaction, or one viral clip. Because by the time Colin Jost delivered that now widely shared joke involving Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, the cultural groundwork had already been building for nearly 8 years, slowly, quietly, and almost invisibly, through headlines, interviews, memoirs, documentaries, public appearances, branding launches, social media debates, and late-night comedy segments that seemed harmless in isolation but looked very different once you placed them side by side. To really understand how dramatic that shift has been, you have to go all the way back to May of 2018, when Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stood inside St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle in front of a global audience numbering in the millions. The ceremony felt historic. The atmosphere felt emotional. The headlines felt almost cinematic. Across the United States, across the United Kingdom, and across entertainment media around the world, Meghan Markle, the former actress from Suits, was being introduced not simply as a bride, not simply as a celebrity, but as a symbol of modern monarchy, a fresh chapter, a new era, a cultural bridge between Hollywood and Buckingham Palace. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle looked almost untouchable. But later that very same night, something quietly happened that many viewers did not fully appreciate at the time. Over on NBC, writers at Saturday Night Live were already turning that fairy tale into comedy material. The audience laughed. Social media clipped the moment. Entertainment pages reposted the punchlines. And while most people saw it as harmless satire, what nobody fully realized was that those early jokes may have marked the beginning of a completely different public journey for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. By 2021, after one of the most emotionally charged royal interviews in modern memory had dominated global headlines, late-night television moved even faster. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were no longer simply celebrities being lightly teased. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were becoming recurring cultural references. By 2023, after memoir launches, documentary releases, streaming controversies, and endless palace headlines, comedy writers no longer needed long explanations. Sometimes a single photograph of Meghan Markle. Sometimes a single image of Prince Harry. Sometimes just a pause, a raised eyebrow, and the audience already knew exactly what was coming. And by 2025, something even more revealing happened. The laughter became easier. The setup became shorter. The reaction became faster. Which brings everything back to May 2, 2026, inside Studio 8H in New York City. Because what looked on the surface like one savage joke from Colin Jost may actually have been the final payoff to a story American entertainment had been quietly building for years. When Colin Jost looked into that camera, when Meghan Markle and Prince Harry appeared on that giant screen, when the audience erupted before the punchline had even fully landed, what viewers may have been hearing was not simply a joke. They may have been hearing cultural recognition. And cultural recognition is powerful, because once millions of people instantly understand the same reference, laugh at the same setup, and share the same clip across the internet before the credits even roll, public perception has usually already moved far ahead of the headlines. That may be the hardest truth in this entire story for Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, and Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, because public image in today's digital world does not collapse all at once. Public image shifts in stages. First come the headlines. Then come the reactions. Then come the debates. Then come the memes. Then come the punchlines. And once public figures become reliable comedy material inside mainstream entertainment, history shows that every new interview, every new project, every new controversy, every new public appearance carries the possibility of becoming the next viral moment. And that is exactly where things stand right now. 8 years ago, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry represented the modern royal fairy tale. Today, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry may represent something very different. A case study in how celebrity culture, royal tradition, internet commentary, and late-night television can completely reshape public perception in real time. So now the question turns to you. Was Colin Jost simply doing what great comedians have always done? Finding humor wherever the culture is paying attention? Or did that moment involving Meghan Markle and Prince Harry reveal something much deeper about how audiences now see the royal family? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is clearly far from over. And if you enjoy deep royal breakdowns, hidden palace dynamics, and the stories mainstream headlines often miss, make sure to subscribe, tap like, and share this video with someone who follows every royal twist, because the next chapter may already be unfolding.